All right, can everyone see the image?
Yeah.
Okay, so the kind of point that we're at is kind of like we've kind of identified what the moving part should be, and we've kind of done an initial prioritization of things that we can kind of do to simplify the design overall. But because this is a moisture swing sorbent, really what we need is CO2ified, like just ambient room air to move past the sorbent while it's dry. And that's when it's going to be kind of collecting CO2 in the sorbent. And then we need a way for it to be sprayed down and wetted so that it'll start releasing CO2. And then with the process of sort of like wetting the sorbent, we need a way to kind of collect all of that runoff water. And so we kind of at least included the portion that would eventually go to this loop seal so that we don't need any manual operation of the drain while minimizing the amount of total collected water, the surface area of the collected water exposed to the internals of this air circulating loop so that it'll dry as quickly as possible. So the kind of major components that we've identified that we need right now are an inlet fan, though it's called an inlet fan, assuming that we're kind of just concerned about the sort of collection of CO2 and then release for testing purposes. It would probably be more accurate to call it a recirc fan if this ends up becoming a semi-reconfigurable recirculating loop. Then we have a spray nozzle. This is probably one area that we can kind of look to find efficiencies. How little water do we need to adequately saturate all of the sorbent without just introducing excessive water? Part of that is because the more water that we run through the system, the more water that will ultimately evaporate. And when that water evaporates, it's got to get replenished. The sorbent sheets is another thing that we're kind of testing right now. It's pictured as having this perpendicular orientation to the direction of airflow. So it's assumed that we're going to have the sorbent sheets kind of the way that Peter designed his for the test bed, stacked on top of hollow rings so that the airflow would have to kind of go through each of the sorbent sheets. This is, in terms of the VIOLET unit, one of the biggest sort of question marks, and where we kind of need to test to figure out what is the right answer here. My personal assumption right now is that when we stack these sheets, the kind of cheap energy efficient fans will be insufficient to push air through all of these sheets. So I'd like to see if we could have these sheets in parallel, and then you just kind of like waft the air across the surface and see if that's good enough. But that's one thing that we're going to have to kind of quickly commit to if we're going to put a VIOLET unit together. The effluent exhaust path it's just when air comes in, it's got to go out. So it's like that's that. And then if it's going to go to a recirc point, it'll either tee off for a CO2 collection path or something else. But all of the missing area is eventually got to get populated if this is going to be collecting CO2 for some usable purpose. The drainage collection area, we just kind of made this the bottom of a 90-degree elbow that we would kind of drill a hole into just so that gravity can do the work of kind of collecting everything, and then we'll be able to pull it down the drain. And the spray runoff drain line, that's the loop seal that I was talking about, kind of like in your sink or your toilet, so that like sewer smell doesn't come into your house. It makes a little N shape, and then the static head of the water just keeps this like slug of water. But obviously, if you turn your sink on, it doesn't overflow because the water coming into the sink displaces it, and then it'll run off. But what that does is it keeps a water seal in this line, and the more water collects in there, the more will just kind of eventually go to some sort of collection area. But it means we only have this little tiny area of like surface area of water that's in that little tiny line that is going to evaporate into this potential closed loop, as opposed to just kind of like a big tub of water. But that's the kind of idea so far. There's obviously a lot of room for expansion and improvement.
So one big difference between this design and what we've been doing in the testing is in the testing, we've just sort of been submerging the sorbent sheets into water to like displace the CO2 and then like pulling them back out. So that's something we probably should test at some point, whether, you know, spraying them with water or drizzling water and how effective that is, how that much that changes with the sorbent that we're currently using.